The house was never just a house. To Jordan Levesque, it was a culmination of every quiet hope he had carried since childhood. To have a place of his own filled with love, safety, and the kind of silence that didn't feel like punishment. As a 28-year-old interior designer living in Seattle, Jordan had worked tirelessly for years, saving every client bonus, skipping vacations, and living in modest rentals, all for the dream of creating a real home with the man he loved. When he married Lucas, a promising surgical resident with dimples and a laugh that softened Jordan's hardest days, it felt like the universe had finally said yes. Jordan used his entire savings to buy the craftsman-style house just a few blocks from Green Lake. Then over the course of 8 months, he redesigned every inch, hand-sanded the oak floors, installed soft brass fixtures in the kitchen, repainted every wall in muted blues and grays that made the morning light look like it belonged in a painting. But there was one thing Jordan couldn't design his way around: Barbara. Lucas's mother had never once called him son-in-law. In fact, she had never referred to their union as a marriage at all. To Barbara, Jordan was the roommate, a well-mannered decorator who just happened to live with her son until she decided he was simply a phase. During family dinners, she would smile at Lucas and serve him first, then speak over Jordan when he tried to talk. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her disapproval was quiet, steady, and sharp, like a leak that ruins the foundation of a home. Slowly then, all at once. Still, Jordan tried. He invited her to brunches. He mailed her a hand-designed birthday card. He even offered to redecorate her dated condo. She declined. "Don't trouble yourself," she said with a condescending smile. "Lucas has better things to spend his energy on." That sentence echoed in Jordan's mind the night he stayed up measuring the final custom cabinets for the hallway. He tried not to let it bother him. He told himself he didn't need her approval. But some part of him, the boy who used to pretend his pillow fort was a real home, the teenager who never dared bring a boyfriend to Thanksgiving, still ached for it. The house was supposed to be a beginning. It was the first time in his life that Jordan felt safe enough to plant roots. Yet somehow, even within the 4 walls he built, there was still a door no one gave him the key to, the door to being truly seen. And when Lucas said, "Give her time, babe, she'll come around," Jordan believed him, until one day time ran out. If this moment speaks to you, if you've ever been the one who gave everything just to be treated like nothing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Heart Stories. The next part of Jordan's story might just be the reminder you need you're not alone. It started with a stomachache. Jordan had been working late on a commercial project and thought the nausea was just exhaustion. But by dawn, he was doubled over in the hallway, trembling and vomiting. Lucas found him slumped against the bathroom door, skin clammy, eyes unfocused. Within the hour, Jordan was admitted to the ER. Diagnosis: acute pancreatitis, severe enough to land him straight into the ICU. The days that followed were a blur of IV drips, sterile ceilings, and pain that came in crashing waves. Jordan couldn't eat, could barely speak. Nurses rotated in and out, charting vitals and murmuring updates. Lucas visited once a day, always looking torn between affection and the stress of his surgical residency. And Barbara. She came once, only to scold a nurse about the hospital food and leave without speaking to Jordan. By the 3rd day, Jordan was too weak to check his phone, but he noticed something odd. Notifications for credit card charges, high-end liquor, catering, a deposit to a local jazz band. At first, he thought it was fraud. Then came a photo texted to him by mistake from one of Lucas's cousins. A group selfie of party guests standing in his kitchen. Behind them was the backsplash tile Jordan had spent weeks choosing. The caption read, "Barbara's 60th is wild, and in Lucas's gorgeous house too." Jordan blinked at the screen, confused and nauseated in equal measure. He read the message again, and again. The date was today. His house, Barbara's birthday. She had thrown a party. While he lay connected to machines, fighting to stay alive, Barbara had taken over the home he built. It wasn't until 2 nurses whispered about the wild party someone's family was throwing back home that the full picture began to settle in. Over the next 48 hours, more charges appeared. Florists, rental tables, an invoice for live seafood preparation. Jordan's pulse monitor beeped wildly, and a nurse had to sedate him when his breathing spiraled into panic. He finally reached Lucas the next afternoon. Lucas didn't answer the call. He texted back instead. "It was just a small thing. Mom said it would lift everyone's spirits. Please don't stress." Jordan stared at the words, unable to recognize the man who wrote them. Don't stress. They were spending his money. Hosting guests in his home, playing music in the living room where he and Lucas had danced the night they moved in. And Jordan, the man who designed every corner of that space with love, wasn't just excluded, he was erased. He asked for an itemized breakdown. No reply. He called the bank and found over $8,000 had been charged across 3 days. His personal card, not the shared one. That evening, a nurse adjusted his blankets and asked, "Got family coming tonight?" Jordan paused, his throat tightened. No, he whispered more to himself than to her. In that moment, surrounded by antiseptic air and the soft hum of machines, something shifted inside him. Not broken, not yet, but cracked open. He realized that sometimes betrayal doesn't come as a knife. Sometimes it comes as silence. And in the silence, Jordan decided this wasn't the end of his story. The ride home was silent. Lucas had picked Jordan up from the hospital in his silver Subaru, the one they used to take on weekend trips up to Whidbey Island. But there was no music playing in this time, no chatter about dinner or recovery plans. Just the sound of tires rolling over wet asphalt and the occasional buzz of Lucas's phone lighting up with unread messages. He never reached for it, never looked Jordan in the eye. When they turned onto their street, Jordan's breath caught. The front lawn, once trimmed and framed by lavender bushes he'd planted with his own hands, was flattened. Plastic champagne flutes were scattered among crushed flower beds. A deflated balloon hung from the mailbox, and someone had stuck a birthday banner over the porch, still flapping in the wind. Cheers to 60 Barbara. Lucas didn't say a word. Jordan stepped out of the car slowly, each step heavier than the last. He opened the front door, and the smell hit him first. Seafood, perfume, wine, a mess of scents that didn't belong in his sanctuary. Inside the living room looked like a banquet hall that had been ransacked. Red wine stains bloomed across his cream linen sofa. A glass table was cracked in one corner. Someone had moved the wedding photo, the one where Jordan and Lucas stood barefoot on the Oregon coast, off the wall. In its place was a decorative mirror Barbara once claimed was more appropriate for guests. He walked through the kitchen like a ghost, retracing his own footsteps. The countertops were sticky with spilled syrup. Empty bottles lined the sink. His curated arrangement of succulents, gone. The ceramic vase from Morocco shattered on the floor. Then laughter. From the dining room, Barbara's voice rang out in that same tone she always used when hosting. High-pitched, performative, dripping with control. Jordan turned the corner and found her seated at the head of the table sipping tea with 2 older women. She looked up and blinked, then smiled as if seeing a neighbor return from vacation. "Oh, you're back early," she said lightly, standing up but not approaching. "We just finished cleaning up. I hope the noise didn't bother you at the hospital." Jordan didn't answer. He glanced at the wall behind her. The family portrait she insisted on taking without him last Christmas was now framed and hanging proudly, as if he'd never existed. "I saw the charges on my card," he finally said, voice low. "You used it without permission." Barbara gave a casual shrug. "Lucas said it was fine. He told me to make myself comfortable. And this is his home too, isn't it?" No apology, no acknowledgement, just the familiar tightening of reality around Jordan's chest. That cruel, precise logic Barbara wielded so well, designed to erase him with a smile. Lucas entered the room, then setting his phone down. "Let's not do this now," he said quietly. "She was just trying to help. You were gone. We needed the house to feel alive." Jordan turned to him, stunned. "Gone, I was in intensive care." Lucas looked down. "I know, but she thought I wasn't coming back," Jordan said, the words tasting like rust. Barbara stepped in. "We were all under stress. Honestly, I didn't even know you were that attached to the decor. You can always redecorate. That's what you do, isn't it?" The dismissal cut deeper than any scream would have. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't even about the party. It was about being reduced to background noise in a life he helped build. Jordan didn't scream. He didn't cry. Instead, he walked to the hallway, took out his phone, and opened the security app. The cameras had been rolling. Every day. Every hour. He looked back at them. "You shouldn't have touched what wasn't yours." And in that moment, something in Barbara's face shifted. A flicker of unease. Because for the first time, Jordan wasn't shrinking himself to keep the peace. He was watching, he was remembering, and he was about to take it all back. The day after the confrontation, Jordan didn't speak much. He didn't argue with Lucas. He didn't call any friends. He didn't even answer his aunt's voicemail, the one she left when she found out he had been hospitalized and no one told her. What Jordan did do, however, was log into every account that still had his name on it and begin. He started with the credit card statements. The numbers were worse than he remembered. Over $12,000 had been spent in less than a week. Catering florists, imported wine gift bags, makeup artists, even a stylist. He checked the shipping address on all the invoices. All delivered to his home, not Barbara's condo, not even Lucas's office, all under his roof. Then came the camera footage. It was all there, Barbara arriving the day after his hospitalization with 3 suitcases in an air of entitlement. Lucas unlocking the front door and handing her the spare keys. The catering crew setting up under the pergola Jordan had hand-built one summer. Footage of strangers drunkenly toasting on his back patio. One woman even joking, "I can't believe how rich your mom's house is, Lucas." And finally, Barbara's voice on the third night. "Well, even if Jordan doesn't make it, this house stays in the family. He never put Lucas on the deed. That was his mistake." That sentence rewired something in Jordan. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was calculated. He printed out screenshots, copied receipts, recorded clips from the surveillance files, and at the bottom of the folder he was compiling, he placed the original deed to the house, the one that stated in clear legal text that the sole owner of the property was Jordan Levesque. No shared ownership, no joint mortgage, no Lucas, no Barbara. The next day, Jordan made an appointment with a lawyer. Not a fancy high-profile type, but a calm, precise attorney named Deirdre Nolan, recommended by a former client. When he walked into her office carrying a box of labeled folders, she raised an eyebrow. "You've done your homework," she said. "That helps." Over the next hour, Jordan told her everything, from the down payment to the party, from the hospital bed to the guest list of strangers who danced on his floors. Deirdre listened carefully, taking notes. "Do you have proof she accessed the house without your consent?" "Yes," Jordan replied. "Lucas gave her the keys, but Lucas isn't on the title. And the credit card charges, all mine, every single transaction." Deirdre looked at him for a moment. "Then we're not just looking at a civil dispute. This is trespassing and financial abuse. If you're ready, we'll move forward." That night, Jordan returned home to Barbara watching a reality show with a glass of wine. She didn't turn down the volume when he walked in. Lucas was upstairs asleep or pretending to be. Jordan passed the living room without a word and went straight to the guest room. His room now, where he kept his things since the party. He didn't touch any of the furniture in the master bedroom anymore. It felt foreign, stained. The legal papers were filed within a week. A cease and desist was delivered to Barbara's temporary mailing address. When she opened it, she scoffed and tossed it aside. "He's being dramatic," she said. "He wouldn't dare." Lucas, when told, simply rubbed his temples. "Jordan, I really wish you'd stop blowing this out of proportion. Can't we just talk it through? She's family." Jordan looked at him, then long and quiet. "And I never was right." Lucas didn't answer. That silence was its own confession. The next morning, Jordan packed the remaining things that still held his scent. His old quilt, the glass terrarium he made in design school, the backup hard drive with the photo archives. Then he drove to his cousin's spare apartment across town. Not because he was running away, but because he needed space to reclaim what was his, without being gaslit under the same roof. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Deirdre assured him the evidence was solid. But even if he didn't win, Jordan knew something had already shifted. For the first time in years, he wasn't editing himself to fit someone else's expectations. He wasn't shrinking, wasn't accommodating cruelty dressed as family. He was building something again. Not with brick and brass and color palettes, but with truth. The courtroom wasn't grand. There were no sweeping marble columns or high ceilings that echoed like in movies. Just a modest room with beige walls, humming fluorescent lights, and chairs that creaked under tension. But to Jordan, it felt like the stage where his invisibility would finally end. Barbara sat 3 rows ahead, dressed in soft lavender and pearls, performing calmness. Lucas wasn't beside her. He had arrived late, chose the back bench, and kept his head down. Jordan didn't acknowledge him. Deirdre had told Jordan not to expect a miracle. Judges don't rule on emotions, she'd said. They rule on evidence, but this isn't just about winning, it's about drawing a line. The hearing began with property rights, deeds, ownership. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, nodded slowly as Deirdre laid out the facts. The house was purchased with Jordan's income. The deed bore his name alone. Barbara was never granted permission to reside there. Legally, she was a trespasser. Then came the financial breakdown. Credit card statements, unauthorized charges. Barbara attempted to justify the spending, saying she had assumed she had access because Lucas never said otherwise. Her voice cracked just slightly when the judge asked, "Did Mr. Levesque ever tell you directly or in writing that you had his permission?" "No," she admitted. Jordan sat still, jaw tight. He hadn't spoken once. Then Deirdre played the security footage. The one with Barbara in the backyard on the final night of the party, laughing with a glass of rose, telling guests, "This house is mine now, that decorator. He's not coming back, not the way he looked in the hospital." The room went quiet. The judge asked Barbara if she wished to clarify. She didn't. Lucas looked down at his shoes. Deirdre ended the presentation with a quiet but cutting statement. "This case isn't about family disputes, it's about respect. Mr. Levesque built that home. He built a life in Swashton. And when he was most vulnerable, the people around him didn't just abandon him, they took." The judge ruled the next morning. Barbara was ordered to vacate the premises within 48 hours. Jordan was granted full protective rights over the property and its contents. Furthermore, she was liable for reimbursement of the unauthorized expenses plus damages for emotional distress. Lucas approached Jordan in the hallway after the ruling. No cameras, no audience. Just two men who had once promised forever. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Lucas said, voice low. Jordan studied him. "That's the problem, Lucas. You never mean anything, you just let it happen." Lucas reached out, but Jordan stepped back. "She broke things, you let her, but I let myself forget I deserve better. That won't happen again." Jordan never returned to live with Lucas. He kept the house, but redecorated entirely. New furniture, new paint. He turned their old master bedroom into an artist's studio, a place where he could create for himself instead of designing for clients who didn't see him. Months later, on a quiet morning, Jordan stood barefoot in the living room. Sunlight filtered through linen curtains, painting soft lines on the hardwood. He poured himself coffee and sat on a new sofa. No wine stains, no ghosts, just stillness and peace. He looked around not for approval, but simply to feel present. For the first time, he wasn't designing a space to impress. He was living in one that reflected who he had become, steady, scarred, but unshaken. He whispered to the silence, "They thought I wouldn't survive, but I rebuilt." And this time he did it for himself. Have you ever had to rebuild after someone tried to erase you? When was the moment you chose to stand up? Even when it hurt, tell us in the comments. Your story matters. If Jordan's story touched something and you don't scroll past, like this video, share it with someone who needs courage today, and subscribe to Heart Stories, where every story stands for something true. Because the quiet ones, they're the ones who rise strongest.